After I got in there. Yeah, that's all.
I'm going to start. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the hybrid in-person and virtual meeting of the Committee of Adjustment for the Township of Central Frontenac. For those who may be new to the committee, my name is Lynn Clegus, and I am the chair of the committee. Joining me this evening are committee members Dan Meeks, Bill Everett, Nikki Gowdy, Phil Smith, Duncan McGregor, and Susan Irwin. We are also joined by Township Planning staff, Jody Legui and Jenny Capusta, as well as Chris Nelson, our Committee Services Coordinator, who will be assisting us as the meeting host. This evening's meeting will follow the agenda that has been posted online. Staff have prepared a presentation for each application, which will be displayed on the screen during the meeting. For each application requiring a public hearing, we will follow this format. I, as the chair, will introduce the file so everyone knows which item we are discussing. The planner will provide an overview of the application. The applicant or the agent will have an opportunity to speak. Committee members may ask questions of staff, the applicant, or agent. Members of the public will then have an opportunity to ask questions or provide comments. I encourage anyone wishing to speak to do so at that time. The committee will then deliberate and vote on the application. Voting will take place by a show of hands for those attending in person or by verbal confirmation for those attending virtually. I will then announce the result of the vote. All members of the public are welcome to provide comments on new applications. Please note that as of January 1st, 2023, only persons specified in the Planning Act are permitted to appeal consent and minor variance applications. Following the meeting, Township staff will provide a copy of the committee's decision to the applicant and to anyone who has requested to be notified within the time period prescribed by the Planning Act. Should you have any questions after the meeting, please reach out to Township staff. The applicant, the minister, or any prescribed public body with an interest in the matter may appeal the committee's decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal within 20 days of the date of decision or notice. The appeals must be submitted through the e-file portal, and details regarding the e-file system will be provided in the notice of decision. I will now ask Chris Nelson to provide an overview of how members participating virtually can take part in the meetings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Once the meeting is open to the public, the chair will ask if anyone has any questions or comments. Members of the public attending virtually will be asked to use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen. This alerts us that you would like to speak. Staff will then notify the chair that someone would like to speak and then proceed to unmute your microphone. You'll receive a notification that your microphone has been unmuted. Please wait a second after unmuting your microphone before speaking. If you're calling in by phone, please dial *9 when you would like to raise your hand during the meeting. You will hear a prompt on the phone that you have raised your hand, and you will be notified when your microphone has been unmuted. This afternoon, it looks as though we have one member of the public participating online and one in person.
In the unlikely account that we have a connection issues and the meeting cannot be restored within 15 minutes, the meeting will be postponed and staff will be in touch with each applicant. Then a notice will also be posted on the township's social media, letting you know. At this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order. And first is approval of the agenda. The agenda of February 10th, 2026, moved by Dan Meeks, seconded by Susan Irwin. All in favor? Oh, sorry. That the agenda of February 10th, 2026 be adopted as presented. All in favor? Carried. Next on the agenda, disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof. Does anybody have anything to declare? Seeing none, please note that. Next, approval of minutes. The minutes of January 13th, 2026, moved by Dan Meeks, seconded by Philip Smith, that the minutes of January 13th be adopted as presented. All in favor? Carried. Are there any deferred items?
No, there are not.
Are there any applications for consent?
There are not.
Applications for minor variance. First up this evening is APPN 2025-0054 Smith McKinnon. Over to you, Jenny.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm on the wrong slide here. There we go. Sorry. Organize those up backwards. So this is an application for permission to expand an existing legal non-complying dwelling. The existing dwelling is located approximately 22 meters from a wetland located on the subject and abutting properties. And the proposal is to remove a portion of uncovered, unenclosed deck, relocate it to where the yellow deck extension is shown here on the slide, and construct a 79.7 square meter interior living space addition. The existing dwelling is a 2-story or more like story and a half, and the addition will be a single-story addition to this dwelling. As I noted, a portion of the attached deck will be removed and relocated to make the deck one long deck instead of an L-shaped, which is what it is currently on the property. The enlarged dwelling will have a minimum setback of 18 meters or 59.1 feet to the wetlands from the addition, and that's as measured to the attached deck portion. One second. So here on the next slide, you can see the subject property, while decently sized, has some significant constraints to locating to the development in any way other than that which is proposed. On the left-hand side, you can see that the subject property is outlined in red, and immediately behind the dwelling, the land rises quite steeply and is a hill on much of the rest of the property. While there is a steep slope here, a site visit by the Conservation Authority determined that the overall gradient of this slope across the property did not constitute an erosion hazard. So it's steep, but not quite steep enough to be the erosion hazard. But it does limit the ability to enlarge the dwelling in the direction either north or west on the property. So the addition is proposed to the south, and again, you can see there's wetlands on the property. The existing septic system is limiting any potential to expand in that direction. So based on that, really the only place you can expand this dwelling is as proposed. As I noted, Conservation Authority did do a site visit, and planning staff had some extensive discussions with them to see if there was any alternatives to not reduce that setback, and they concurred with the application that this is the most logical and reasonable way to expand this property. So as I said, though this was circulated to Conservation Authority, their comments came back January 19th of this year with no objections as submitted. They did note again, it meets the minimum 15-meter wetland setback, which is the MVCA policies for their minimum permitted setback under their policies. And the septic system is more than 30 meters. So it was stated by a qualified septic installer that the existing system is suitable to accommodate the proposed enlarged development. However, if further review at building permit stage determine any expansion is needed, there is more than sufficient space outside any required setbacks to enlarge the septic system at that time. There were no public comments received regarding this application. Planning staff are recommending that, subject to any discussions or comments received tonight at the meeting, this application is approved, subject to the conditions in the planning report. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Does the applicant or their agent, would they like to have a chance to speak?
Through you, Chair, to the committee, I'd just like to say thank you for your time and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Do any of the committee members have any questions of staff, the applicant, or the agent? Okay, seeing none. Members of the public have an opportunity. Are there any members online that would like to speak?
Seeing none?
Okay. And at this point, then I will go to the motion. Moved by Nikki Gowdy and seconded by Duncan McGregor that minor variance application APPN 2025-0054 Smith McKinnon for part lot 17, concession 2, geographic township of Oso, 17860 Road 509, the Township of Central Frontenac be approved to permit a single-story 79.7 square meter or 858.1 square feet addition to an existing legal non-complying structure with an attached 27.7 square meter or 298 square foot deck extension. The structure will have a minimum water body setback of 18 meters or 59.1 feet measured to the attached deck, and that the effect of the application is to grant permission to expand an existing legal non-complying structure under section 45 in bracket 2 of the Planning Act to allow the development. And further that the Secretary Treasurer shall issue the notice of decision in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act, including providing notice of decision to the applicant, any person or public body that has made a written request to be notified, and any other person or public body prescribed. All in favor? Carried. Next on the agenda is APPN 2024-0020 Hussey. And Jenny, could you make your presentation?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is an application for minor variance to permit the development of an existing vacant lot of record. This property is quite a complex property. It's long and narrow and located between Arden Road and Salmon River. There's very limited development envelope on the property, and the applicants have worked quite extensively since mid-2024 with conservation and township staff to complete required studies and identify suitable building envelopes and construction that would permit this property to be developed. On the screen, there's a lot of colors and lines. So as I noted, the property is long and narrow. And this is a portion of the survey sketch that was submitted. The sketch was completed by Hopkins Chitty, to ensure that the required setbacks could be met. So all the numbers on here are not estimates, as some sketches are, but they are identified, and this sketch will serve as part of the decision, should the committee approve it, to ensure that the development is done in compliance with the geotechnical studies and the requirements of the Conservation Authority. So the blue line on this sketch is the top of slope. The property from that point down to the river drops off quite steeply. It rises about 50 feet in a space of about 10 feet or so. It's very steep. I have walked along there. It was a little concerning. I'm very impressed with them to be up there and not be afraid of heights. I'm afraid of heights. I absolutely couldn't be out there, much of this property. But they have identified a good area. There's a plateau where the development is proposed here shown. The property then at the rear, approximately the 7.5 meter front yard as required, rises again to the surface of Arden Road. So there isn't a lot of opportunity, if any, to increase setbacks either from the top of slope or from the wetlands on the opposite side of Arden Road. So the proposals for dwelling, and this be a limited area, so dwelling with a footprint of 59.5 square meters, plus an attached uncovered unenclosed deck of 23.63 meters squared. The entire dwelling will be located minimum of 16.4 meters from the high water mark of Salmon River. That is measured horizontally. As I noted, it does drop off quite significantly. And this does meet the minimum 6-meter setback from the top of slope that was identified as a suitable, stable environment for the property based on the geotechnical review that was submitted by the applicants and reviewed by the Conservation Authority. Additionally, they're looking at constructing a storage shed with a footprint of 17.64 square meters, so just under 300 square feet, to be located about 20 meters from the high water mark, and looking to install a full class 4 septic system, minimum of 19 meters, to service the dwelling. When this initially came in, they were looking at having a full garage on the property, a gazebo, and some other structures. Throughout the process, it was determined that that level of development was not appropriate for this property, just given the constraints of the slopes and different things on there. And the applicants were really receptive to working with township and conservation staff and came up with this revised proposal. And it was reviewed by Conservation Authority again to ensure compliance with that geotechnical study to make sure that there weren't going to be any negative impacts on the slope or impacting that erosion hazard, because in this case, the erosion hazard would lead to their house falling into the lake or the river, which definitely not something that's an ideal situation for anybody. Here on the next slide, you can see this is the view of the entire property, and that's outlined in red. And I've put onto this one the contour lines. So the closer they are together, the steeper the slope. So, and as you can see along the shoreline, they kind of merge into one another, just noting quite how steep that slope is, and it drops off. So as noted in the report, there's a large number of variances required to permit development of this property. That's because each one of those, for the setback to the river, we're looking at both water body setback as well as front yard setback. And there's also a setback to the wetlands on the opposite side of the property. Again, sometimes if you're looking at a large number of variances, it'd be more appropriate to a zoning bylaw amendment. However, each of the structures required 3 variances because of the constraints. So the limited development on the property, it was opinion of planning staff that it was still most appropriate to contemplate the development through the minor variance process rather than going through a full zoning bylaw amendment. As I noted, a slope study was completed and reviewed by Quinty to determine the appropriate setback from top of slope. Normally they'd have a 15-meter setback, but they concurred that that 6 meters shown in the study would be sufficient for this property. Quinty also noted that all development does meet their minimum 15-meter setback from the 1 in 100-year floodplain of Salmon River. And they were again supportive of the reduced setback to the wetlands on the opposite side of Arden Road, as the road is actually higher than either the property or the wetlands, and really serves as a barrier between the wetlands on the opposite side and this property. The water's not going to flow up a 7-meter hill and over the road to get to the wetlands on the other side, so they were fine with any reduction that was proposed from those. All development on this property will require permitting from Quinty Conservation, and that includes filling, grading, anything like that. Submitted with the application was a application for the installation of a septic by a qualified septic installer, confirming that the location identified on the survey is suitable for the installation of the septic system. Planning staff would like to note that this permit would still need to get approval from Township Building Department prior to any construction starting, but that submission does confirm that is the opinion of that septic installer, that this is a suitable location and has a suitable design that can serve this property. There were no public comments received regarding this application, and planning staff are recommending, subject to any comments received at the meeting tonight, that the committee does approve this application as submitted and subject to the conditions in the planning report. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny. Do we have the applicant or agent available to speak?
Yep, it looks like we do.
Would they like to?
Your microphone is unmuted. Oh, you muted it.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yep.
We're happy that the committee is able to review our proposal, and we're able to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you. Do the committee members have any questions of staff or the applicant? Yes, Phil.
The only question I had was Quinty made a comment that they reviewed the geotechnical slope assessment and they talked about infrastructure. So I'm assuming the plans that were submitted to them included the class 4 septic system, so full tile bed and everything that's going to be there on the slope.
That is correct. All of that was provided to them as part of that review.
That's the only question I had. Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none. Are there any members of public that would like to speak? Okay, then we will read the motion. That moved by Bill Everett and seconded by Philip Smith, that minor variance application APPN 2024-0020 Hussey, affecting Part Lot 7, Concession 10, Geographic Township of Kennebec, Arden Road, Township of Central Frontenac, be approved to permit the construction of a new 59.5 square meters or 640.5 square feet dwelling and an attached uncovered and unenclosed deck measuring 23.63 square meters or 254.5 square feet on the water side of the dwelling, with a minimum water body setback of 16.4 meters or 53.8 feet from the high water mark of the Salmon River, measuring to the edge of the deck, and the installation of a new Class 4 septic system with a minimum water body setback of 19 meters or 62.3 feet, and a storage shed with a maximum footprint of 17.64 meters squared or 190 feet squared, and a minimum water body setback of 20.1 meters or 65.9 feet from the high water mark of the Salmon River. And that the effect of the application is to grant relief from sections 5.6.2 and 4.26.5A of the zoning bylaw 2011-52 as amended. And further that the Secretary Treasurer shall issue the notice of decision in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act, including providing the notice of decision to the applicant, any person or public body that made a written request to be notified, and any other person or public body prescribed. All in favor? Carried. Is there any other planning business?
No, there is not, Chair, Madam Chair.
At this time, I'll call for adjournment, moved by Susan Irwin and seconded by Nikki Gowdy. All in favor? Oh, sorry. That the meeting be adjourned until March 10th, 2026 at 5 p.m. virtually and in person in the council chambers located at 14216 Road 38, Sharbot Lake, or at the call of the chair. All in favor? Meeting adjourned.